Hi, Sarah Zeren from Sarah Zeren Coaching and Counseling here, and I am here today with Monica Reagan from Meditation Mamas, and we are going to do a coaching demonstration. It has occurred to me that while I talk about how much I love coaching and how effective it is and how easy it is, there's a lot of questions about what does coaching actually look like, so that's the purpose of this video. Hey, lady.
Hi.
Thanks so much for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Free coaching.
Yeah, free coaching. And full disclosure, I've coached her for a long time, and she's coached me too. So we are definitely in our element for sure. So for the purpose of this coaching conversation, where do you want to dive in? What are you interested in kind of getting to today?
So here's what's up for me is my husband and I have been trying to get pregnant for a while, and in my last pregnancy, I just experienced a ton of anxiety. It really, there was a lot of joy. I was super excited to be pregnant, but the anxiety and the overriding feeling of that there was going to be a catastrophe or something was overriding a lot of the joy. And now that we're trying again, I really, really don't want to go through another pregnancy like that. I really want to move through this pregnancy with, I want to say the word I want to say is a little bit more detachment from the outcome. I don't want to be detached from, a soul that I'm bringing into the universe. But wow, is it hard for me to reconcile doing that work and not getting super clingy to it and a lot of anxiety around it. So I just want to move through this one in a more graceful way.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it makes complete sense to me that as you are focusing on trying to get pregnant, that this is kind of coming up. And I love that you are coming at this from a conscious place of, I really want this to be different. I want to experience this differently. Tell me a little bit about what the anxiety looked like, what it manifested itself as, how you experienced it. Let's dial that in.
Yeah. So we'd lost a pregnancy before Samlai. And that was super, super triggering. When I got pregnant again, I think I was happy for about 45 seconds. And the next emotion that set in was, oh my God, what if I lose this pregnancy too? And I spent an entire pregnancy that way, just being convinced that somehow this was going to be taken from me. So every doctor's visit was just an experience in shaking and violently feeling like I was going to throw up until the doctor did the ultrasound and confirmed that the baby's still well. And even then, I would feel some relief. And then, as we were walking out to the car, my husband, I'd still just be I would make him remind me over and over, the doctor said it's good, right? Having to check in about what reality was a lot with my husband, who was really great about it, but it was tiring for him to have to constantly remind me that the doctor said that everything's okay. Unfortunately with this day and age, there's Google, so I would Google any symptom that came up at all, any weird twinge, anything that felt out of the ordinary to me. I ended up Googling and going down a horrible Google rabbit hole with that, and self-diagnosing with terrible things that were obviously never the case.
Yeah.
I just spent a ton of time in a story about what I was afraid would happen instead of in what was actually happening.
Yeah. Well, you had evidence, right? You had really, really strong evidence that something really can go wrong.
Yep.
Really, really, really terribly wrong.
Yeah.
So again, it's no wonder that that's kind of where you went with it, and that was your experience. And I have to say, I'm so sorry that is what happened for you during your beautiful pregnancy with Samlai, and that it didn't feel the way that you wanted it to. And I can only imagine that there feels a sense of robbery or loss of a potential experience.
Totally.
For you in that. And again, I love that you're kind of looking forward to this next pregnancy, realizing I don't want that.
Yeah.
So I think in order to get to where you want, and what I heard you say was, I just, maybe we can think of some tools or some ideas or some approaches in terms of how things can look differently, and we totally can do that. And in order to do that, I think we need to get really a lot more clear on what the anxiety is.
Okay.
And kind of where it's coming from. So I just want to throw that out there to you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I think that's super important. You know, it's like I do have the tools, you know, with this meditation that I've been cultivating for the last 9 years. It's like I know what the tools are, but when the anxiety kicks in, it's like this rigorous ride that I'm on that's hard to get off of and remember to use the tools even. You know, it makes me feel sick to my stomach. It makes me feel, it's like the anxiety tells me that what I should actually be doing, which is like sitting down, right, and breathing through some of this stuff, using the tools I know that I have. What the anxiety does is it feels like it's too scary to even get off the bed to go use those tools. It really keeps me in this like vice, this like straitjacket of the only safe thing to do is to sit here and continue to reason out all the possible outcomes and figure out a solution to all the possible outcomes. Yeah, which is crazy making.
Well, I mean, here's the good news: is that what's happening for you, and I suspect that what's getting triggered through in this anxiety is it's really, really, really deep stuff. And what's happening when you can't pick up these tools that you've been practicing for 9 years, you know exactly what they are, you know how to find them, you know they're going to help you. But what's getting triggered through this anxiety, and again, I suspect that it's a little bit deeper than anxiety, is your amygdala is going crazy. So that's like your reptilian brain, right? So it like lives right back here. And when we go into fight or flight, and when we have experiences of really intense trauma and anxiety and fear, that gets triggered, and it sends a signal to our prefrontal cortex that says there's something really wrong, and it starts to cloud our ability to think, because this is where executive functioning and higher reasoning happens. Okay. So this is where you're like, here's where I go to reach my meditation tool. This is what I need to do in order to calm down. But because your amygdala's been triggered, you're actually not capable of showing up in all the amazing ways and accessing all the tools that you know how to access. Yes. Right. Wow. Right. Yeah. Right. So also the other cool thing is that all the things that you're talking about inside of your group in terms of meditation for mamas and really harnessing and bringing in this anxiety is to calm that response. Yeah. Right. So I think a couple things, we can go in a couple different directions here. Is one is what's underneath all of this, right? And then the other piece is how can you start to recognize and can we make a list of when you know that you're going into that fight or flight response? What can you tell yourself before you get too far into it when you can't get out of bed? Yeah. Okay, this is where I am. My amygdala is getting triggered. I know exactly what's happening here. It's a literal chemical reaction that's happening in my brain. Yeah. How can you like head that off at the pass? Do you know what I mean? So for the purpose of this coaching conversation, what feels like the best direction for you to go in that's going to be the most supportive?
Yeah, I love exploring the idea of heading it off at the pass. Like what really is triggering it? Because it felt like I spent the entire pregnancy just like one long 9-month period of anxiety. But I'm sure there were moments of, you know, there must have been moments of like calm in there, because I did function as a person. So yeah, I love the idea of finding out like, okay, so what is triggering this and how to head it off at the pass.
Okay. Amazing. I love that. Yeah. And the other thing that I will say, and because I have the benefit of being your friend and having some other knowledge outside of this coaching conversation, is that you mentioned to me, you were like, I didn't meditate throughout my entire pregnancy. Yeah. And so talk to me a little bit about, I mean, the fact that you have awareness around that, the fact that you are like, you know how important this is. Right. What could this pregnancy how could this pregnancy already look different? Oh, man. With that knowledge in mind.
Yeah. Like, just already preparing for it. Luckily, I have had the presence of mind to go ahead and already prepare for it. Like, now, while I'm not experiencing any anxiety around, you know, like, I don't know if I'm pregnant or not yet, already sitting down every night and heading it off at the pass that way, I think. Already knowing, like, a big trigger for me is pregnant, and so like before that happens, sitting every night and doing what I know to do and sitting down and already breathing through the anticipation of anxiety yet to come.
Okay, so amazing.
Thanks. Doing that one thing on
I'm like, you're so easy to coach. I'm like, you're doing it yourself. But yes, this is already so different.
Yeah.
You already have massive amounts of awareness around what you don't want to experience. You're already anticipating this to the point where this is what you wanted to be coached on today, right?
Right, yeah.
And let's just feel into this for a second, because do I 100% trust, and I mean, not this is about me, but I 100% trust that you are going to continue with those tools. You're going to be meditating in the morning or whatever your daily practice is that helps you to feel grounded. You're not going to let that go.
Okay.
You're just not.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, like, if the previous pregnancy was a 10 in terms of, like, you just don't want to feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about what, on a scale of 0 to 10, what that would have felt like for you had you been meditating the whole time.
Oh, man. On a scale, I would say maybe like an 8, because that pregnancy was my first. I could have taken some of the intensity out of, things that I already knew from meditating, like checking in with, like, having to check in with reality all the time, instead of constantly going to my husband, like, is it true? Is it true? God, going back inside to, like, what I know. Like, I think that's what I would have really have liked to have had on board, is that, like, I do have intuition to draw upon. I didn't have any previous experience with pregnancy,
Right.
but I have a ton of previous experience with just settling into, like, what I know in my heart to be true, and I didn't trust that at all. And I think if I'd been meditating, I would have had at least that tool to draw on, like, not so much having to go outside of myself to check in with what's real, but going back in and being like, I know this baby's okay, and trusting that, which I so didn't. Like, I wanted to trust that. I wanted to say, like, I know this baby's okay, but I wasn't meditating, so I wasn't super in touch with that part of myself. And so I kept asking outside myself for it. And I think I could have at least brought that down, like, from a 10 to, like, an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even, like, a 7 or 6 in there, if I had really gone in and been like, this baby's okay. You don't need to Google. You don't need to keep asking your husband 50 times a day.
Yeah.
I would have loved some stronger trusting my own intuition.
Okay. I love that. And I love that, the meditation will work with calming your central nervous system down, the breath work that I'm sure that you'll do along with that. But what you're really wanting, if I'm hearing you correctly, is to self-trust.
Yes.
Is to self-trust. And if I'm overlaying that with the experience of your first pregnancy, it's not that you were self-trusting. This is my guess. Mm-hmm. It's not that you were self-trusting or not trusting self. You just were like, sweet, I'm pregnant. I've never been pregnant before. Here we go.
Yeah.
And then the rug got pulled out from underneath of you. And
yeah.
That's such a terrible way to say that, because it sounds so minimizing. But just in terms of looking at pregnancy 1, pregnancy 2, and pregnancy 3, you are really recognizing that self-trust piece is huge.
Yeah.
So think about a time when you have really, really, really trusted yourself, and you have felt the way that you want to feel inside of this pregnancy.
Yeah, it's interesting. What's coming up actually is, this is just like, it's coming up in a strong way, is, God, and I was like 17 at the time, like maybe the last time I felt that, like I was 17 and I was having to make a choice about where to go for college, and I just was able to make choices in that time and not second guess them in any way. Like, and I made a choice to move out to New York, which I ended up, like, really, that wasn't for me, and I ended up coming back. But the choice to go out to New York, it was just like such a no-brainer. It was like, oh, this is what I got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of felt around me some, like, oh my God, you're going to go from Casper, Wyoming, a town of 50,000 people, to New York City. Are you sure you're really going to? But it was like, no, I'm doing that.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
And it ended up being like a huge, I mean, like I would not be where I am with anything. It was a huge growing experience, like lots of learning and growth. And I ended up not staying there and coming back. But I, to this day, know that I made the 100% right. Just a lot of like, no, I feel like I got to do this.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So how did you tap into that? I mean, what does it feel like? How did you tap into it? And how can you kind of bring some of that reality, some of that experience into your current day?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, you know, when I was 17, I flew by intuition almost all the time. It was like really unclouded with caring about much anything else, you know?
Okay.
And, you know, now here I am and I'm 36 and I care about my husband and now I care about my son and a career, and there's way more things to care about, way more things that I feel like have to come into this circle of like taking other people into consideration, people who I love, my family. I got to take all these things into consideration. When I was 17, I had me to take into consideration. That's what I felt responsible for, was me. So I guess it was just so much easier to tap into me. I wasn't doing a bunch of like, what do mom and dad want? It was the opposite. It was like, I was really just really tapped into what I want with no outside influence.
Right. So now, as Monica the Wise 36-year-old, how, other than we've identified meditation, right? And I know that's a big one. How else do you tap in to yourself?
Outside of meditation, man, I don't know if I have really tapped into myself, actually. Like, that's an interesting question. It's been a long time since I've, like, really just tapped into, like, okay. Well, okay, no, I'm going to take that back. I have tapped into what I want and absolutely 100% just gone for it. In fact, I've done that in the last 3 months.
Okay, fantastic.
And again, you know what? It was almost like it wasn't me. Like, I don't think I had much to do with it. It's just like a thing that comes in and is like, you're going to do this now. And I'm like, oh, I am going to do that now.
Okay.
It's like a whoosh. It's like, it just comes through. Like, and the last thing that it was like, there was the second meditation workshop, the level 2 meditation workshop. And it was just like, oh, I'm doing that. Oh. And if I stood back and like watched it, it was like, I guess I'm doing that now.
Okay.
And I completely trusted that. I'd never second guess, like, well, it's on Saturdays, so do I want to take that time away from my family, or would that be good for me to be away from Sandland? None of that actually came in. It was just, oh, I'm doing that.
Okay. So how can you bring forth some of that? Is it a feeling that you want to feel? Because I know what you wanted to get to, and I would love for you to identify, because that's really what this is what are the tools that you know you can just pull in order to feel the way that you want to feel. And then you've identified that really is grounded in self-trust. So that's kind of where I'm trying to shed some light or get to are those pieces. So is that feeling of the whoosh for you? Like, what are some other ways that you know that you got there totally in a place of self-trust?
Yeah,
like,
the whoosh is
the mind chatter did not even come in. You were just like, this is the truth.
Yeah. I think it's like you described it, that whoosh feeling. It's like when that whoosh comes in, there is no denying that, like, that's what I'm doing next. Okay. And it's led me in some funky directions where, like, if I had gone in and analyzed it a bunch, like, I may not have gone to New York. I may not have, like, chosen to do a lot of things. I'm glad I did.
Is the whoosh your intuition?
Yeah.
Okay.
The whoosh is intuition, and it's a real feeling of, it's not comfort. There wasn't like a comfort feeling about going to New York, but it was like a comfort with that being the choice. Just like I had a bunch of fears about going to New York. I mean, leaving my family for the first time. But there was no discomfort with that choice.
Okay. And how interesting, because that can be overlaid so much onto the idea of pregnancy. Like I'm imagining would be excited and joyful and grateful, but there's also fear.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear. So how can you live more in a place of in intuitive excitement or knowledge or grounding or knowing or whatever that is during this pregnancy?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like in the first pregnancy, I would say I was very excited to be pregnant. I was just beyond stoked to be pregnant. But I never did tap into that, like, that being pregnant was also, like, a huge whoosh for me, that, like, wanting to be pregnant was, like, a no-brainer for me.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I was scared, of like, all the same kind of things. Of course I was scared. Of course there was the unknown, which I don't like the unknown.
Yeah.
But the being pregnant part was, like, an absolute no-brainer. Super comfortable with the choice to be pregnant.
Okay.
To start having children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then how are you feeling? Because, I mean, I guess at the very beginning of this coaching session, there was a lot of anxiety, even in just, I feel like, saying the words, some of the words out loud, and I'm not feeling that right now. I mean, how are you feeling in terms of some tools or your confidence level that you know when to pick the tools up?
Yeah, I think that maybe, like, the tool that I'm going to walk away with here is that really not to ignore that whoosh of intuition. That sort of the newness of pregnancy maybe took that from me last time, because, I was like, well, I've never been pregnant. I don't know what I'm doing here. Who am I to trust an intuition, because I don't know anything about pregnancy.
Okay.
And maybe this time feeling like, oh, I've done this. And I'm sure it will be a completely different pregnancy, probably.
Right.
There's a chance that it will be completely a 180 from whatever it looked like last time. Children tend to do that. But a knowledge that the intuition is real, that it's, even if pregnancy is new, even if this pregnancy is new, the intuition is not.
Yeah. No, the intuition is not, and your ability to connect into it is so strong.
And listen and trust it is not new at all.
Absolutely. And the idea that you are going to buy into a story that says you don't know what you're doing, I mean, that's just not true, right? So I wonder how much benefit it would be to collect evidence to the contrary, right? So to do some sort of like a journal entry or however it is that works the best for you to really feel into, this is what I do know about being pregnant.
Yeah, and those things won't be anything medical, What I know about pregnancy is going to be just a big, long list of intuition things that I know.
Right.
Things I know.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get the feeling, and what I've been hearing from you is that the key for you, the path, the way through this pregnancy in order to experience it the way that you really, really want to, is going to be awareness of when this is taking over. Yeah. Right? Yep. Some of the fear stories that are there for a really good reason.
Totally.
Really good reason. Identifying when that's happening, and then self-trust. Anchor into self-trust, anchor into self-trust, anchor into self-trust, however that looks. And it seems like meditation is one of the primary ways that you can do that.
I'm going to anchor into self-trust. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. Is there anything else that wants to be said, like in this moment?
Just that I'll check back with you when and if I do get pregnant, because I know that anxiety can come up so strong. Like, it is so strong. My intuition is strong, but man, it's equal and opposite is the anxiety. And I know that bumping up against it, I'll need some reminders that, like, no, I know. The doctor says this and this, and Google says all this, and I'll do my best to stay off of Google. But, that really what I know here is a lot stronger than what anybody else can tell me. And that's the only way that I will get comforted, is because I tried asking chat, and I tried outside resources, and
Right.
the only way to really feel better is to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you do. And I love that. And you
Okay.
know that I'm here for you in every capacity.
Yes.
But I also want to validate that, I mean, those anxieties are big. They're really strong. And they can really they really are self-propagating, right?
Yes.
And I will tell you, that is not going to be your experience this pregnancy.
Okay.
It's just not.
Yay.
And I know that, I mean, the whole way of coaching is not unsolicited advice, just so you know. But the real strength, as you just said, is not from hearing it from me, right? It's from you knowing it from you.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here telling you that's not going to be your experience because you're sitting here telling me that you're aware of this.
Okay.
And that you want to dismantle it and you want to have a different experience, which means that you will. You know? It doesn't mean you won't have blips or experiences or feelings of it or, right? But that doesn't mean, oh my gosh, look, here's this one experience. Rabbit hole.
Of course, I have to go down that hole.
Right.
Again. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I know that to be true.
Cool.
I feel like that's totally true, you know? So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm excited. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
Because I also know that going through this and practicing that self-trust and you recognizing, oh my gosh, look, I'm doing this. I did this. Let's say it's on the other end of the pregnancy and you've got a beautiful, healthy little girl or little boy. Your self-trust is only going to be so solidified because you walked with yourself through some of this pain and did it differently from a place of conscious choice. And that's just like, that's the stuff right there.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely.
With me.
Thank you for doing this.
Yes. For sure. Oh my God.
Wow.
So good. You can tell that we drink the Kool-Aid for lots of different reasons. But hopefully that was helpful and informative in terms of what a coaching conversation can look like versus sitting down with a friend or even with a therapist to kind of parse out something that's going on for you. So yeah, have a good one. I'm gonna have to do some editing if it's even still playing. It better be.
Oh my God.
It is.
Oh, phew.